Right, we're live, Cabo. Right, okay, guys, we're here with Cabo, who is a former F-15C and F-22 pilot. And yeah, Cabo, it's been probably about 10, 11 months since we spoke last. What's been happening on your end?
Yeah, it has been a while, but it's great to catch up again. Great to see your face, and looking forward to having a live chat and answering some questions. So, um, yeah, it's been good. It's been really busy in terms of uh, transitioning out of the Air Force. So I moved from Virginia, where I was stationed with the F-22 demo team, and then moved out west. And now I'm a corporate pilot, volunteer at a museum in Southern California. And then I'm still in the Air National Guard, so part-time Air Force, working F-22 stuff still.
Oh, wow. So, do the Air National Guard actually have F-22s? I thought it was just F-15s at the moment.
They do. So it's actually it's interesting because most F-22, actually all F-22 squadrons, have what we call TFI or total force integration, where you have active duty or full-time folks, and you also have Air National Guard and Air Force Reserves. There are some subtle nuances between the two, Guard and Reserve, but they're anywhere between part-time to full-time in the Air National Guard and Reserves. But every F-22 squadron is kind of mixed between active duty and those components as well.
Brilliant stuff. And guys, get your questions coming in for Cabo on what it was like to fly the F-15C and also the Raptor. But yeah, Cabo, I've been following your journey on Instagram, and you had a trip in, and I think it was a MiG-29, and was it an Alpha Jet as well? What was that like?
It was amazing. So the folks up there are just incredibly kind to invite me up there to fly and spend the weekend with them. So it's part of the Polaris program, which is basically heavily involved in St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So they do a lot of volunteer work for them, which is incredible, incredible cause, and also heavily invested and involved in SpaceX. So Jared Isaacman will be, and then another gentleman, Kid Poteet, will be, along with two other folks, will be on the first all civilian crew on the next manned SpaceX launch. So it's an amazing group of people, very very talented, very very kind, and I was just very thankful they let me go up there and hang out with them for the weekend in Bozeman. Bozeman is just an amazing, beautiful place as well. So Montana is just awesome, and yeah, I got to fly multiple times while I was there for the weekend, and got to fly an Alpha Jet, the L-39, and then also the MiG-29. So that was just an amazing experience in terms of performance. L-39 to Alpha Jet, then to MiG-29, and the Alpha Jet. Actually, I never flown in an Alpha Jet or MiG-29 for that matter. The Alpha Jet was incredibly responsive, accelerates really well, and it was a blast to fly. And then the MiG-29, I was surprised, after having flown the F-15 for about 4 years. I felt like it handled very similar to an F-15. There were some subtleties in terms of like flying qualities and the way the aircraft feels, but overall it was very similar. So I was actually really pleased, and it was a great performing airplane. Had a lot of fun.
Was the MiG-29 a duel, or was it you just in the back, or?
Dual control. So that flight was actually kind of fun because I was, as you probably know, I really enjoy photo, video stuff, and then editing videos and all those things. So I had the privilege to sit in the back seat and film the four ship of L-39s, and I got to fly as well. So some of it, I'm flying with one hand and holding the camera with the left hand and doing that whole thing. But it was beautiful. It was an amazing day, and being able to fly a MiG-29 was just super cool.
Absolutely. And what was like the power like in terms of takeoff compared to the F-15C? Were they similar in terms of when you kick in the afterburners or read?
Yeah. So I mean, I haven't flown the F-15C since 2014. So it's been a bit since I flew that airplane, and I couldn't honestly tell you exactly the differences between the two. It was very impressive in terms of takeoff, and then what was noticeable was they have those doors that help block foreign object debris and rocks and all that stuff. So as soon as those doors open up, then you get way more thrust. So that was a really noticeable point where we take off, we select afterburner, and it's good acceleration. The doors open up, and then holy cow, it definitely kicked in pretty good. So it was, it's a small, very very light airplane, and it's got a lot of power. So And obviously the maintenance team there is very, very knowledgeable and does an amazing job keeping the aircraft in tip top shape. So it was a pleasure to fly for sure.
And with that MiG 29, is that just like for a pleasure thing, or is it like directed to like a science based project, or is it just, yeah, I've got a MiG 29, I can do what I want?
So they've flown it at a couple of air shows, and I think they're going to plan on doing more air shows in the future. I don't know exactly the mix of aircraft they're going to use once they kind of decide what they're doing. But one of the really cool elements they do as well, part of Polaris and SpaceX and all those things, and work with NASA, is they'll take astronauts up and fly. So they
Wow.
expose people to aviation, expose people to the way Rook, so Jared Rook Isaacman, the way Rook kind of describes it is, putting people in a situation where it's a high consequence environment, and that's something that a lot of people haven't experienced before. And when you're sitting in an F-22 or an F-15 or an MiG-29 or any of those fighter jets, it's a very, very different world and performance, the speed, the pressures you're feeling in your body as you're pulling G's. All those things are different, and obviously the consequence of something going wrong or you making a mistake could be catastrophic. So that kind of high consequence training, as well as exposure to aviation, is one of the things they do with those airplanes as well, and it's really, really cool to see that.
Brilliant stuff. And I'm going to have one more question, but guys, get your
Yeah.
questions coming in the comments for Cabo on what it was like to fly the F-15 and Raptor. But sitting in the MiG 29 cockpit, was there a big, like, did it feel like a downgrade in terms coming from the F-15C? Was it a bit more analog compared to the F-15 Eagle?
They've definitely done a really good job of maintaining a lot of the original systems in the aircraft, but they also have upgraded a lot of avionics. So, for example, it has Garmin avionics in there as well. So it
Right.
kind of is still like contemporary in terms of avionics and navigation abilities and all of those things. But it was it was cool because there were a lot of things that, from a very young age as a fighter pilot, studying and learning about the Russian systems and all those things, to like see those systems in real life and be in the backseat of a Big 29 was very, very cool. The cockpit itself wasn't as big as an F-15 or F-22 for that matter. It's bigger than an F-16, but still a little bit compressed in there. But like I said, in terms of avionics, it was really cool to have the newer Garmin suite in there, but also still retaining a lot of the old Russian, original kind of equipment that was in the airplane.
Great stuff. As you can see on the side there, Cabo, there's some questions coming in. So if you can just start from the top. And guys, enjoy this and get your questions coming in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. All right. So the first question here we have: how stressful or annoying to fly against F-22 with non-stealth planes? Do you do not feel the pilot that their efforts are pointless? Stealth planes are simply outclass the non-stealth. So uh, it depends in a lot of ways. I mean, the stealth aircraft, so F-22, F-35, obviously have a very unique capability that allows them to operate in places other aircraft can't operate. So that's a very, very big advantage. I will say though, I mean, the F-22 is phenomenal in terms of performance within the visual range arena. However, if you have a very, very experienced F-15, F-16 pilot, they know the limits of their aircraft, and they're probably going to know that airplane way more than a brand new F-22 pilot. So while the F-22 is physically capable of being way better than everything else, there's still low pilot proficiency. So it's not as simply as not simply just flying the airplane and being F-22 that everything magically happens for you. You still have to work at it, and that experience factor still is in play when it comes to fighting other aircraft within visual range. All right, let's see here. So from Mike, during your Eagle days, did you ever get the chance to meet the legendary Paco Geisler? Was it before your time? I did not meet him. I think it was before my time. All right, next question. Let's see here. House period, do you still consider the F-22 to be compared to the Su-57 and J-20? Without going into specifics and details about the F-22 or those other platforms, I will tell you that I still 100% would take a Raptor to combat over any other airplane in the world. It is a phenomenal platform for what it's intended to do, and air-to-air combat is just kind of in its wheelhouse. So I would take a Raptor against anything else. If you're able to read between the lines in that one, then I should answer the question for you. All right, right. Good afternoon, Eglin. Hello. Yeah, bummer. The F-22 training squadron just moved from Eglin. So they're at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. Then they moved to Eglin Air Force Base, and now they're up at Langley Air Force Base. So that's actually where I'm working part time, teaching F-22 stuff as well as in Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. All right, in Gulf War I, the U.S. Air Force concentrated most of the air-to-air work towards an elite F-15 squadron in the 58th. Do you agree with that decision philosophy? I wasn't involved in that process, so I can weigh in one way or the other. I would hate to speculate and make a uninformed decision or an uninformed opinion on that, but I would say that the F-15C and the F-15A at that time, was the best air-to-air platform in the world, and to allow the people with the best equipment and the best training in the air-to-air world, allow them to do their job, makes complete sense to me. So just like saying, hey, we're going to use an F-16 CJ for seed missions, like that makes sense, or a Growler for seed missions, or an A-10 for close air support. You allow those airplanes and those pilots who have the capability with their kit as well as the training to operate in the environment they're trained to do. And that would be the air-to-air world for the F-15. So without going specifics on the 58th, I would say that the F-15 at the time was the best air-to-air fighter in the world. So allowing them to do that makes complete sense to me. All right, knowing what we know now, if we could restart the F-22 production line, should we, or just press on for NGAD? There are so many factors in that question, but obviously I wish we could have continued to produce F-22s for a much longer period of time, produce more of them. A lot of congressional constraints and limitations placed on that program throughout the process of it. So we didn't get to produce as many as we would have liked to have produced. But if we would have been able to keep going, that would have been obviously phenomenal. I think the F-22 is an amazing platform. And now when you integrate new things, new technology into that platform, it makes it even more lethal than it already is. So with that, definitely would take more F-22s. And in terms of NGAD, I think it's going to be a phenomenal airplane. In terms of, from what very little I know about it, it'll be a phenomenal airplane and be able to kind of handle the challenges that we foresee in the horizon for the air-to-air world. All right, next question from Mike. Is thruster vectoring useful outside of BFM or air shows? From the looks of it, air-to-air engagements are usually happening outside the visual arena. I think thrust vectoring, one, it's in the F-22, it's all automatic. So it's part of the flight control system and allows us to operate very high altitude. So we're still going to get some elements across the flight regime, even if we're not dogfighting or, within visual range arena. So I think the thrust vectoring is a great capability of the F-22. And it's very, very reliable, which is a huge factor in having, you have to have amazing capabilities, but also be very reliable. And the engines on the F-22 are phenomenal, and the thrust vectoring has been great. In terms of, let's see, out to the visual arena, I think we have to look back at history, right? So I think history is a great teacher, and if we don't read history, we don't understand what happened and how things played out, then we're subject to those things happening again, or those eventualities repeating themselves if we take the same course of action. So when we look at the air-to-air world and we look at within visual range fights, really, I mean, over the last 50 years, I don't know of many, if any, air-to-air engagements that somebody shot somebody else down in a platform specific timeline for a shot or anything like that beyond visual range. So everything kind of evolved into within visual range. There are so many components to that lead to that portion. I mean, obviously we'd love to be able to shoot beyond visual range and the engagement that way. But I think we look at history as a teacher, we have to realize that we require to have that capability within visual range and be equally lethal in that arena. All right. When was the last F-15 retire? FAM's still going, and it flew in 1958. Yeah, so the F-15, I'm not sure when the retirement date's going to be. They're still phasing those out because the Air National Guard still has those aircraft, and they're still flying them for a lot of important missions. So that is all to be determined in terms of timeline for when it retires. All right. Can you tell us more what's happening at maximum speed? I don't know. If you ever watched Talladega Nights, like Ricky Bobby, it's going real fast. No, the airplane goes really fast, obviously, and at its top end altitude and airspeed and all those things, it's pretty amazing to see the Earth just kind of rotate underneath you and get a sense of that speed. It's not the speed at which if you're 100 feet off the ground and going very fast, you have a sense of you have a sense of speed because everything relative to you is close and you're seeing it going by quickly. But when you're high altitude going very fast, it's almost a very odd feeling where you just see the Earth kind of rotating underneath you because you're going pretty fast. So other than that, I mean, the airplane's very, very stable, and I'm 100% confident the airplane will go higher and faster than I could probably ever imagine. All right, next question. I have seen a demo of the F-15QA similar to the EX. It was as agile as hell and more so than the regular Eagle, but flown without conformal fuel tanks. Will this be the standard fit, do you think? I honestly don't know. I saw a quick YouTube clip of the F-15QA demonstration, and it looked like a great airplane. From what I've heard and read, it seems like they have a pretty amazing, advanced flight control system that's digital flight controls, which allows the airplane to be even more maneuverable than the Eagle. But in terms of conformal fuel tanks, those are designed to be added or removed as desired based on mission set. So if they need more gas, they probably throw them on. If they don't, then they probably leave them off for weight considerations. But it's all going to be based on the mission. All right, from Michael D. How likely is a dogfight in today's network-centric environment, with both sides employing VLO fighters? Going back to the previous comment and the previous question in terms of dogfighting, I think that the likelihood of within visual range engagement is way higher than I'd say most people probably expect. And given that, I think we need to be prepared for that eventuality as well. And I think we are. I think we have a lot of amazing capabilities in that arena. So there are a lot of factors that go into that and why it would not be beyond visual range exclusively. But I think that we spend a lot of time training and preparing on the developmental side as well as the operational side to have the best capabilities you possibly can in that arena. All right, let's see here. All right, from Mohammed. Hi, sir. What will you say about F-22 lost dogfight against Philippine FA-50 and recent exercise Cope Thunder? I'm not familiar with that scenario, and I think the biggest thing to take away is that, like every other country, we have our airplanes, we have our capabilities, whether it's in the air, on the ground, or in the sea. Any of those things, we do certain things in training that we would not do in combat. For example, we may limit ourselves in some capacity in training to drive certain desired learning objectives from the exercise. And there's scenarios too where the F-22 or whatever other platform may be pretending to be an adversary aircraft. So if that's the plan for the exercise, then the intent is for that red air platform, that adversary aircraft, whether it's F-22, F-35, F-16, F-15, whatever it is. The hope is that the blue air or the coalition side wins in that scenario. So once again, I don't have any specifics on that specific scenario, and I can't give you an informed comment on that. But I will tell you, like I said, that we will do things in training to limit ourselves in some capacity, given capabilities. All right, how long does it take to become a flight instructor or test pilot in F-22? Great question. It takes quite a while. So if you were to go through from the timeline of basically, we'll start from university. So everybody in the Air Force and the Navy and the Marine Corps has to go to university for 4 years before they can fly any airplanes in those respective services. So you do 4 years at university, then you go to pilot training, which takes about a year. Then you do a small training course that it's called lead-in fighter training or introduction to fighter fundamentals, and you'll do that for a period of time, and then you'll go to your actual aircraft, and then you'll do about 6 to 7 months in the F-22 in this example. From there, you go to your combat squadron, and you'll start off as a wingman. You'll do your initial qualification in the combat squadron, and that'll effectively, say that you are now qualified legally to go to combat and use that F-22 if needed. From there, it's probably going to take another 4 to 5 years to become an instructor pilot in the F-22. So now we're talking if we don't include university, we're talking probably 7 years from the time you join the Air Force and start flying at pilot training to becoming an instructor pilot in F-22. And then in terms of test pilot, there are two different kinds of test pilots out there. So in terms of like or developmental tests, that's the people that go to test pilot school. They'll have to be an instructor pilot first, and then from there they can apply to test pilot school. That program takes about a year. I'm not super familiar with it, but I know they do a lot of math, science, engineering, and flying a lot of different aircraft to be the best in terms of their abilities as a test pilot. And then you also have the operational test side. So developmental test is more associated with how does the airplane fly? If we put new things on there, for example, a question before that we had about conformal fuel tanks. So like, how does the airplane fly with conformal fuel tanks? How does it fly without the conformal fuel tanks? Checking the flight envelope of the aircraft. And then you have operational tests, which you do not go to test pilot school for. And that is more, how do we take the new capabilities we have on the aircraft, both hardware and software, and now apply that to our tactics, our training, or development to employ the airplane as a weapon. And that is basically, instructor pilot position as well. And just two different paths in terms of test pilots. All right, next question. Will there come a day when all fighters will fly without humans on board, or are pilots always needed? Not a crystal ball. I can answer the question, but I don't. I will say that there's a lot of amazing technology out there in terms of autonomous or unmanned aerial vehicles that we use today. But I will say that I think having a person in the cockpit making life and death decisions, if required, allows us to apply ethics, morality, training, all those really important factors when it comes to taking a life. Allows that person to apply all those things in that scenario. Many scenarios, whether it's training or combat, are very complicated, and we all probably are familiar with the fog and friction of war. That's obviously a very real thing in terms of air to air and air to ground from employing fighter aircraft. So in those very obscure and ill-defined scenarios, we have to have somebody making a decision, taking everything holistically, into that equation before they, either pull the trigger, drop a bomb, shoot a missile, shoot a gun, whatever it is. So I think for the foreseeable future, we'll have humans in the loop for sure. All right, next question. What squadrons do you belong to when flying the F-15C? So I was in the 114th Fighter Squadron at Kingsley Field in Klamath Falls, Oregon for training. I was about 7 months, and then I went to the 44th Fighter Squadron, the Vampire Bats in Okinawa, Japan. All right, next question. What is your advice on becoming a combat pilot? So I think in terms of becoming a combat pilot, I think it's going to depend, greatly in terms of the country that you live in. So every Air Force across the globe is going to have different requirements to getting in. I can speak on the Air Force side, U.S. Air Force side, having gone to university first, and then going to pilot training and all those things. And I would say that the biggest keys to success that I've found, at least personally speaking, would be to maintain a balance. The whole process of becoming a fighter pilot is not a sprint. It is a very long marathon kind of process where you're learning a lot of stuff, a lot of information over a long period of time, and you're constantly developing and growing. So having the discipline to have balance in your life so you don't burn yourself out, I think is important, because you can run at a certain pace for so long, and then eventually that pace wears off. So if you're able to find a way to have balance in your life, that I think is super helpful. So for me, that was working out, that was sleeping properly, eating properly, all those things that allow me to perform a highest level of performance every day, at least most days. Obviously, everybody has days off as well, where they're just not 100%. But overall, that was helpful to me. And then the other element of that is time management. So when you're doing a task, when you're focused on something, then you need to be 100% focused on that task and accomplish it. So it's studying, whether it's whatever it is, we continuously get inundated with distractions in our life. So whether it's cell phones, whether it's TV, whatever it is, I would venture to say most people can, look at their phone and find that they've been scrolling through some social media platform for like an hour a day, if not more. And you look back and you're like, well, what did I get out of that hour from the day? And the answer typically is not much. So putting those distractions aside, focusing on the task at hand, whether it's studying, whether it's preparing for a flight, whatever it is, that skill set of task prioritization, task management, and time management, I think is one of the more important things for becoming a combat pilot. All right, which is easier to in-flight refuel from, the F-15A/C, there's receptacle forward on the side, the F-22 on the rear spine. They're both. I think they're both pretty easy airplanes to refuel from. Both airplanes are very, very stable. They obviously turn really well and perform really well, but when you're just cruising or in-flight refueling or anything like that, it's very easy to do. The F-15C has mirrors, so you have a canopy bow in front of you, then you have mirrors as well that you can adjust. So the refueling receptacle is basically behind your shoulder to the left, and you can actually adjust the mirrors to see where the boom is at. And that is a very nice way to be able to see any deviations and correct them pretty quickly. The F-22, you obviously can't see behind you, so you're looking at the lights underneath the tanker. And if people aren't familiar with that, there are tanker or there are lights underneath the belly of the tanker that allow you to adjust your position based on what they're seeing in trend data. But the F-22 also has amazing flight controls that once you open the door, it actually helps you out a little bit in terms of the in-flight refueling process. All right, both the Eagle and the Raptor perform well at high altitudes. Given how much most pilots enjoy flying fast and low, did you get much chance, official or not, to get down the weeds and need a jet? Yes, absolutely. So I flew, especially in the air show world, I flew low and fast every flight I did. And in the F-15, we did plenty of low-level stuff as well. I was able to fly the F-15 and the F-22, both of them in Alaska. And flying in Alaska is just amazing. It's incredible in terms of the ranges out there that you can use, and then the altitudes and everything. We were able to go low and go fast and enjoy the scenery. So it's probably, I don't know, it's obviously partial, but it's probably the best way to check out the mountains. All right, how much air to ground training did you do in flying F-22? I'd say it's situation dependent. So when we deployed in the F-22 to the Middle East, we would obviously do a training program prior to leaving the States to go to the Middle East. And we would focus most, if not all of our efforts on ground or air-to-ground training, given the fact that was our mission set when we're deployed to the Middle East. The rest of the time is typically just air-to-air. All right. Do you think an F-15 with an F-22 avionics and radar would be a tactically relevant jet? I would say yes, given the fact that the F-15EX is coming out, being produced. Obviously, they're still producing F-15s, the F-15QA that came from the previous question. So there are a lot of, I think the F-15 as a platform is incredibly solid. It's been proven over and over again. And in terms of like flying qualities, structurally, like all those things, it's just, a very stable and proven platform. So if we're able to upgrade that platform, we start with a known quantity of an airplane that we know flies really well, and we start adding new avionics and radar and all those things. So I think that that would definitely be a relevant aircraft in certain scenarios, and is probably a lot more affordable than some of the nicest, F-22s or 35s out there. All right, winning an F-22, what are your top 3 most challenging fighter to face in DACT? So disciplined air combat training, and where are the pilots from? That's once again, it's gonna vary quite a bit, because when we go to training scenarios, we don't, we're oftentimes going to limit ourselves, and the other people that are joining are probably going to limit themselves as well. So I can't say with certainty which would be the top fighter to face. I'll just say, generally speaking, I've flown against Rafale, flown against Eurofighter, flown against let's see, a couple other aircraft as well, and they're impressive, but I still once again go back to the same comment that for the air-to-air specific mission, I think F-22 is the best airplane in the world for it. It is not the best when it comes to air-to-ground, and there are plenty of the mission sets where it's not great at, but the F-22 by far is the best air-to-air plane out there. And that kind of just goes to, I guess, my personality, and I think it's probably similar for a lot of the folks flying F-22s or A-10s for that matter. We all like 2 engines, and we all like a single mission where we're very focused on that one mission. So, I mean, if you need close air support, you're going to call an A-10. That'd be your number one choice. And if you need air-to-air, then you would call an F-22. And I think personality wise, we all like being really focused on one thing, being the person you're going to call if you need help in the air-to-air world or air-to-ground for the A-10 world. Go to your last point of the question in terms of where they're from. There are definitely quite a few European countries that I thought. I went to NATO or to a NATO program for pilot training, and we had Norwegian pilots, we had Dutch pilots, we had Germans, Italians. So I mean, they all have I think they have great pilots and have great airplanes, and I think that goes into experience and training. And the nice thing about all of our kind of NATO partners is that whether it's British pilots or whoever it is, like we all work together quite a bit, and the Australians as well. We have Australian exchange pilots, British exchange pilot, and a Canadian exchange pilot flying F-22s presently. So we all interoperate quite a bit, and I think with that we learn a lot from each other. We learn our strengths and weaknesses, and we try to get our overall collective team to the best place we possibly can with that collaborative talk. How much fun, or indeed how would you consider it to be based on a carrier for 6 months or more? Well, I joined the Air Force, not the Navy, so I personally, I would not enjoy being on a ship for 6 months or more at a time. I definitely enjoyed my time in the active duty Air Force and the quality of life the Air Force provides. And I think one of the other big factors, and this is not anything against the Navy by any means, because everybody has to follow their path and whatever they really want to do, and the Navy has phenomenal airplanes and phenomenal pilots. For me, it really came down to I guess a conversation I had when I was growing up, and a family member told me, join a service, like do what your service does, if that makes sense. So if you're in the Navy, do ship stuff. If you're in the Army, do ground stuff. And if you're in the Air Force, fly airplanes. And I think with that, you look at the Air Force and you look at the capabilities across the Air Force enterprise, and you say we have airplanes that are really, really good at air to air. We have airplanes that are really, really good at air to ground. We have, the most lethal bombers in the world. We have all these capabilities. So from the air side, there's just a wider focus on aviation than the Navy or the Marine Corps as an example. So for me, it was kind of a simple decision to go to the Air Force because I could pick from a wider array of aircraft and also fly airplanes that are specialized in a mission. I mean, the F-18 is great, but it's similar to an F-16 in the sense that it does air-to-air and air-to-ground. Same with F-35, where it does a little bit of both. As the Air Force, it has lots of options in terms of aircraft that you can pick from. All right. Are there any lessons that you learned flying the Eagle that a pilot transitioning straight to fifth gen aircraft would have missed out on? I think so. I mean, when you take 4-ish years of experience flying a fighter jet, whether it's Eagle or an F-16 or an F-18, it doesn't really matter. I mean, 4 years of experience is 4 years of experience. Processing, radio calls, employing the weapon, understanding tactics, understanding overall mission sets. That's just time. So whether it's an Eagle or a Viper or like an F-18 or whatever it is, it's still going to give you 4 years of experience that you otherwise wouldn't have had if you went straight to a fifth-gen aircraft. And I think one of the things that the experience allows you to do as well is to process the right information at the right time. And the F-22 or the F-35, for example, there's so much information being presented to you from the systems of the aircraft that sometimes you get inundated with that information and not understand what to look at the right time to make the right decision. And, especially when we're talking about decisions that need to be made in a matter of seconds, knowing how to prioritize where to look and what to look for is really important. So I think that's one of the key elements of having flown an aircraft, an Eagle, Viper, Hornet, whatever it is probably beneficial. And doing that for 4 years, 3 or 4 years, whatever it is, for that specific person probably gives them a leg up compared to a brand new F-22, F-35 pilot. All right, next question from Nick. The ability to fly with weapons officer in the tub would be one example. Sorry, let me reread your previous question to answer that. Let's see here. You're talking about like flying a two-seat F-15 or two-seat F-16. Honestly, once you finish the training course and you go to your combat squadron, you rarely ever fly with somebody in the backseat. We just don't train that way. We want to train all of our pilots to understand that, if they're flying a single seat fighter, they are in charge of all the decisions and everything related to the aircraft from the time they start it up to the time they shut it down back in the chocks. So we want to instill that mindset that that is your aircraft and that is your responsibility to bring back to the maintainers safely after your mission. So oftentimes you don't really fly people in the backseat. All right, let's see. Besides F-22, what aircraft would you love to fly in combat and why? The A-10, A-10, 100%. It's just an amazing airplane. And to me, the A-10, much like the F-22, is focused on one mission set. So it's focused on close air support and does that incredibly well, better than everything else. So to me, flying that aircraft would be, obviously a 180-degree out switch in terms of mission sets, but I think it'd be phenomenal. And who wouldn't want to shoot the gun? It's awesome. All right. In terms of professionalism and skill, do you think pilots like Jared Isaacman approach that of the actual U.S. Air Force, U.S. Navy pilots? He seems to be focused on flying as well, on flying well. I would say Rook flies very well, and he's very focused on flying and really everything in aviation, to include working with SpaceX and being the commander of their first civilian spacewalk, which is awesome. I think given Jared's background, it's just very different than the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Navy background. So he has probably spent a lot of time trying to learn those skills, and for us, it's kind of just habituated over years and years and years. So I think having the framework of the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy to train pilots and kind of explain those details and those processes is really good for developing consistently good pilots. But people like Jared obviously had phenomenal teachers that taught him those same lessons. So in terms of flying, I think he's obviously a great pilot, and I think that's probably a testament to his ability to learn and process things very quickly, but also to a testament to the people that explained and taught him and instructed him in that process. All right, Cole. Hi, Cabo. What's the process for becoming a demo pilot, and how is that experience different than an operational squadron? Yeah, it's a great question. So the process to becoming a demo pilot, at least for the F-22 community, is you have to become an instructor pilot first. So you have to be teaching in the aircraft for a period of time, and then you can apply to become a demo pilot, which typically is on a 2-year cycle. And in terms of differences, I think the biggest difference is we are, as demo pilots, we're constantly on the road, traveling, doing air shows. 25 to 30 events a year. So we're on the road probably 200 days plus a year doing events. And it's different than an operational squadron because the operational squadron is focused on training missions, all the time. Whereas our full-time mission really is to go fly air shows, interact with local communities. So that was a big difference. And one of the things I enjoyed most about that job, i.e. the demo job, was that our mission was going to talk to school kids, whether it's elementary all the way to university, explaining about the Air Force, talking about the airplane. And it was also phenomenal to lead a team of people that are just amazing human beings. Being able to go travel with them around the country, around the globe, show off the F-22, show off the professionalism they have when it comes to maintaining the aircraft and making sure it's ready to fly. Going to talk to students. It honestly it's one of the most inspiring things when you see somebody's like the light bulb in their brain click on, and they're like, "Holy cow, I can do this too." Because for a lot of youth out there, they don't think that it's possible. They see it as an unattainable goal. And I guess through sharing my story, sharing the people from the team and sharing their stories, it makes it more relatable when you put a face to the person, a face to the person flying the airplane or fixing the airplane. You really get to see like, oh man, these are just normal people, and they've worked really hard, and they've been successful through that hard work and perseverance. And I'll tell you that every single person that's done something successful in their life has had to overcome some adversity, and it's just a choice. Do you accept the circumstances you're faced with, or do you overcome those and carry forward? And I would say that that was incredibly rewarding in terms of the demonstration job, but it is very different than an operational squadron that's focused primarily on training. And I would say too that the operational squadrons are doing training missions all the time unless they deploy. Whereas in the demonstration job, there's no training. It's just your full time mission is your operational mission. You're traveling, you're doing your thing, at air shows around the country. So being able to have that job satisfaction of doing your job as opposed to just training for it was really really enjoyable. All right, a purely fantasy setting where you could go into a fight with any aviator, ace pilot in history. Are there and they are current your preferred aircraft? Would you choose? Um, that's a tough one. And there's so many amazing aviators out there, from not just the United States but from across the globe. I think I'm partial to Robin Olds, probably like most U.S. Air Force fighter pilots are. He has such an amazing history in terms of his development and growth. I mean, his dad was a fighter pilot or a pilot in World War One. He grew up, was surrounded by some of the most amazing aviation minds in U.S. Air Force history and U.S. Army Air Corps history at the time. So he was just surrounded by that environment of people, and his perspective on aviation, combat from the air, and his tenacity, I think, were qualities that made him very, very unique and very well suited for all the roles he took in leadership along the way. So being able to fly with him and go to combat with him, I think would be pretty incredible. We have an amazingly talented pilot, an amazingly talented leader. Once again, that's forged over decades and decades of being surrounded by some of the best aviation minds in the U.S. Air Force and U.S. Army Air Corps history, and then also being put in positions where he was able to lead his men, to some of the most challenging environments we've ever seen in air combat. All right, next question. How would you deploy to Incirlik Air Base with the F-15C? I did not. Nope. All right. Do you consider the YF-23 could have been good, as if not superior to F-22 had it won the ATF competition? Who knows? I mean, it looked like a super cool airplane, and at least the unclassified stuff that I've seen just perusing the internet looks pretty compelling in terms of the aircraft's capabilities. And talking to some folks who were part of that ATF competition, they all raved about the YF-23. So I can't say what if it would be better or worse than F-22. I will say the F-22 did take a lot of the lessons from the F-22 or YF-23 program and incorporate them. So the YF-22 and the F-22 are dramatically different aircraft. So I think we got a lot of goodness from the YF-23 program and incorporated that to the F-22 production model. All right, let's see here. Can you share a memorable DACT story you had against a European fighter? Yeah, absolutely. So I was flying an F-15C in the Middle East, and we had a lot of French pilots there at their falls, and that was really the first time I got to fly against a fighter from another coalition partner nation. So that was cool. Doing my first BFM engagement with the Rafale was really cool, because I'm like, man, I'm used to just seeing F-15s out there, and now I'm seeing another airplane. The Rafale obviously is a great airplane. It's very light, very powerful, very maneuverable. So being able to see another airplane out there as you're dogfighting was a cool experience. I just like I said, it was my first time doing that, and that was amazing. All right, what is it? What is it that makes becoming a fighter pilot so challenging? Learning to fly the aircraft, understanding the physics behind it, or physical training? I would say none of those. So, I mean, learning to fly the aircraft is just a matter of studying and practice. Understanding the physics behind it is, once again, just knowledge and academia and studying. And physical training, I mean, is something that most people should be doing anyway. So those are definitely challenging, but I would say the most challenging thing in becoming a fighter pilot is understanding how to take information, prioritize it correctly, and then make decisions at a very, very fast pace. And there are careers across the globe that also have those same skills and same challenges with them. I think flying a fighter jet, puts you in an environment where you're going very fast. It's very dynamic, and that's one thing I love about air-to-air. Is that the air-to-air mission set is always different every time. It's never the same, and it's always dynamic. So I really enjoy that. So I think taking information, knowing where to get the information that you need at the right time to make the best decision you can in a very short period of time, I think is probably the most challenging part of being a fighter pilot. Did you have fun in Australia? Absolutely. So I've been to Australia multiple times now, and really great friends with the Australian exchange pilots that I flew with in Alaska. So Australia is just an amazing place, especially the last air show I flew was in Melbourne at the Avalon International Air Show, and that was an amazing experience. My very first air show, not as the official demo pilot, but a kind of a pseudo air show, was actually at Avalon, and that was back in when I was stationed in Alaska. So to have that be my very first time flying in the airshow environment, and then also be my last time flying in the airshow environment with F-22, was pretty incredible. And the Australians are just great people. Matt Hall and his crew was out there, and a lot of there are actually some folks from the states that went out there to fly the airshow as well, and just the hospitality, the friendliness was amazing, and Melbourne's a great town, so we had to check that out as well. All right. Do you think one of the issues of the F-22 production was the delay in semi-mature avionics for the F-35 Block 3 and some sort of common avionics for the F-22 was so delayed? I don't know. I don't have any specifics on that question to answer in an informed manner. Do F-22 pilots have a standing order to hold back during air shows and exercises? Once again, it depends a lot in terms of when we're going to play 100% versus not. The air show, I can speak to that very, very well in the sense that the air show itself demonstrates a lot of the amazing capabilities of F-22 in terms of performance when it comes to maneuverability, speed, acceleration, deceleration, all those things. But in the airshow environment, the most important thing we focus on is safety. So everything we do at the airshow is still going to have a very large margin for safety because we're doing this in front of crowds of people. And one, we have, I would venture to say a national asset. We don't have very many F-22s out there in the world. So we have a very, very precious resource for flying at air shows. And then also we have a lot of people there spectating. And the worst thing in the world would be to have a mishap at an air show where you have families there with their kids and they watch this whole thing happen. It's just an absolute disaster. And for that reason, we prioritize safety above anything else to include performance and demonstrations and all that stuff. And all the maneuvers we do have a margin for safety so we can ensure that the demo pilot's safe, the aircraft's safe, and we don't get ourselves in a bind. All right, compared to stick and rudder for flying F-15C, how nice is it to have a digital flight control system in the F-22? Does it help as a guard pilot where your muscle memory needs refreshing? Yeah, you still use a lot of rudder in the F-22, much like the F-15C did. I think the F-22 flight controls are phenomenal. They really are intuitive. It flies as you would expect an airplane to fly. There are no tricks. There's nothing crazy it catches you out with the flight control system. And I would say even, like going from the F-15 to F-22, it wasn't, it didn't take more than a couple of flights to kind of get used to it. And then you love the system. It's just a phenomenal flying airplane. Let's see here. What's the highest altitude you've been in both jets? So we don't fly with spacesuits, so we don't go super high. I mean, it's still higher than pretty much most everything else. But I can't really say how high I've been, but it was pretty high up there. All right, have you done any DST with any RAF jets? If so, how'd you get on? So I don't think I've actually done any big exercises with RAF. It's mostly been in Asia, Australia, France, a couple other places. I mean, there may have been one or two that I did with RAF, but I don't remember which exercises those happen to have been. I've been at exercises with Eurofighters and everything. I remember they were great people and flew well. So that was just an observation position, and then. Like I said, there may have been, I flew fighters for the Air Force for about just under 15 years. So I've done plenty of exercises, and I can't remember all of them and who all participated in all of them. Raymond, nice. What do you think might top the F-22 in terms of your next career steps? Do you think you'll be excited to move on from the F-22, or does not get better in your opinion? I think in terms of fighter jets, it doesn't get better. The F-22 is incredible. Very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to fly it, and then also be able to fly it in the demonstration for 3 years. And in terms of like moving on, so I'm still working the F-22 part time, so I still get to enjoy that element of it. But in terms of a full time job, my priorities are not are just different in terms of life. And then I think being involved in the museum down in Southern California is just a very different path. So it's go from F-22 to vintage aircraft to me is it's not like I'm trying to top F-22. It's just a completely different world in terms of aviation. And then also to be around people that are so knowledgeable, both in the maintenance side as well as the flying side, and have a wide array of vintage aircraft is just amazing to be there, be around them. And when you climb into the cockpit of an older airplane, it's just the nostalgia piece is unmatched for sure. Okay, let's see here. For Neuropilot, I did not fly with him. All right. Let's see. Hello, John Kunstler here. I don't have met you at Nellis 22. Hope you get to fly in a 2024 air show with Major Bayo, please. Well, unfortunately, so Bayo's 4 years on demo have come to an end. Mine obviously came to an end last year, but who knows what air show stuff will be in the future. But pleasure to meet you as well. I'm glad you made it to Nellis 2022. That was a great show, and it was a great way to kind of cap off the air show, like domestic air show circuit, and getting to fly with Bayo was awesome. So her and I have flown together a bunch over the last couple of years in the air show world. So being able to do my last show there and having her fly there on the wing was great during the Heritage Flight. What's your scariest moment as a pilot? When anything breaks, really bad breaks, because obviously we're not driving a Toyota sedan, we're driving an F1 race car. So compared to a reliable four-door sedan that turns on and turns off and works as you expect, we're flying airplanes that are at the high end of performance. So when things break, they could break in a really, really catastrophic way. Thankfully, I've not had too many crazy experiences, but yeah, when anything breaks, it could be bad. So in a fighter jet, you don't have a lot of people there to consult with. You just have your flight mates and other aircraft who are not in the aircraft with you. So that's just those are scenarios that you definitely train for and prepare in the simulator, and going through kind of like tabletop discussions of different emergencies and sharing knowledge as well. So experiences happen across the fleet of aircraft. We will talk amongst pilots and pass information to show that knowledge. So if anything does happen, we're able to handle it. All right. Have you ever flown the Mach with Wales? I have not, unfortunately. It looks awesome. I'd love to do it, but I have not. I probably will not in F-22. How do you feel doing post-stall maneuvering at still altitude? It's the very first time when I did the demonstration over the airport in Virginia, that was definitely eye-opening, because you're like, man, I'm really low, and all the training rules we talked about in terms of performance and airspeeds and angle of attack and all those things when we train over the land, over the water, they're kind of out the window. So it's just unfamiliar territory. But doing that for the first time was exhilarating for sure. And then you slowly step yourself down from basically 2,500 foot floor all the way down to the surface. And then each time you get lower and lower. And I think what it taught me the most was that the F-22 is it's phenomenal. Especially low altitude at the surface. The airplane is under complete control, has huge amounts of power, and is able to get out of any kind of underpowered or post-stall maneuver situation, low altitude without a problem. All right, aside from stealth, what do you think the greatest improvement is in the F-22, the F-15, or the fourth gens? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for jumping on and answering the question or asking the question. I think, one, flight control, it's kind of two things. I would say engine and flight controls. So the engine, the F-22 are phenomenal. They're very reliable, and in terms of performance, they're just awesome. So you have the thrust vectoring that comes, as part of the F-22 engines. But I would also say like the thrust vectoring is also part of the flight control system. So it augments the flight control system as like a secondary flight control surface or system. And then the flight controls themselves are amazing. It's so intuitive, and it's very, very difficult to put that airplane under control. I mean, you have to know exactly how to do it, and even if you try your very best, it still may not go out of control because the airplane is so stable and the flight control systems are really, really well done. So it's just a testament to the engineers and designers that developed the aircraft. I mean, they just did an outstanding job. All right. Why is the F-22 code maneuver in the demo different from the flanker code maneuver? In the Raptor, there's a climb, where the flanker, there's no climb to the code maneuver. Is it intentional? Yes, it's absolutely intentional. So the following maneuver after the Cobra in the F-22 demonstration is a J-turn. So we need some more altitude for the J-turn to be able to do that, because we'll basically bring the airplane to almost a complete stop and just pivot in space, almost like a cartwheel. And so we need a little more altitude for that. So we'll do the Cobra, the climb up, and then do the J-turn subsequent to the Cobra maneuver. And I mean, I'm quite confident the F-22 can do exactly what the flanker can do. It's just a different scenario for the demonstration. All right, when will the Raptor demo team visit Asia? They're actually there. So Captain Raz Larson and the demo team were in at ADEX in South Korea this past year, and they flew a demonstration there, which is awesome. All right, according to you, which one is better aircraft, Russian F-57 or Chinese J-20? Answers A, B, C, and D would all be F-22. I know it's not your question, but I haven't flown any of them, so I don't quite know what the performance of those aircraft would be. I don't know what the Russian Su-57 timeline is for development and operational use. The J-20 seems to be a little more advanced in terms of timeline, so who knows? But once again, just go back to the Raptor. It's an awesome airplane. All right, if you could own and fly any airplane, money's an object in history, what would your favorite airplane be to fly? It's a tough one. So many airplanes. So many airplanes. I think flying the SR-71 would be awesome. Like, it'd be super cool to fly the airplane, given its performance and just the history of the program from development all the way to development of the SR-71 would be super, super cool. All right. A friend had a major hydraulic issue in F-22. Not a good day. Grab the cable using tail hook. Sorry, AGS. Do you have a major loss of hydraulics with flying? I have had major hydraulic issues before. I have taken cables before, but the training that we spend behind the scenes in the simulator, during all of our training programs, et cetera, are very, very robust and allow you to rely upon that training when those scenarios get to a place where they're very complicated. All right, I think we're almost up on time, so I'll take this last question here. Will the F-22 ever get JHEMIX or HMCS or a wide area display? The home-mounted queuing system, we'll see. It's been in discussions for a long time. I don't make those calls, or I'm not in the room with this conversation, so I couldn't answer the question in terms of like, will it ever get those or timelines for those? But yeah, would you fly the Dark Star if you could? Dark Star? What do you mean Dark Star? Like the spherical object from Star Wars? Or about like Top Gun 2?
Yeah, I think it was there from the Top Gun scene there. But,
okay, yeah. So the fictitious airplane. I was like, I don't think the Dark Star flies from Star Wars.
Yeah. So Cabo, thank you very much for coming on this this Q&A, and thank you very much for putting the questions. There was some great ones there, but Cabo, like, to wrap up, where can we find you and what you're doing up to? Like, what have you got going on?
Yeah. So obviously I have Instagram. I don't really have any other social media platforms. I just did Instagram, and honestly, before the demonstration job, I kind of deleted everything social media related. I started the Instagram account when I started the demo job, and I think it was really beneficial in the sense that I was able to talk to people, like people to reach out to me directly. So if it was middle school, high school, university, sending direct messages, ask questions for advice, etc. And I think now that I'm like 4 years post the beginning of my demo team job, is incredibly rewarding to get messages now saying, "Hey, I took your advice," and obviously I completely realize I'm not under any assumption that I made some profound impact on somebody. But whatever small impact I made, they took the advice, they worked hard, they had the determination and the grit to get past, whatever hurdle was in front of them to achieve their goals. And to see them succeeding is so incredibly rewarding. So, for social media, Instagram, and then in terms of what I'm doing now, like I said, I'm a corporate pilot flying a corporate jet, and that's been great. And the other stuff I'm doing is the part-time F-22 stuff at the Air National Guard, and then also the Planes of Fame Air Museum in Southern California in Chino. So hopefully, I've been my time there has been mostly spent learning about the airplanes, working on them, like physically turning wrenches and fixing stuff and replacing stuff, and that's been phenomenal. So I've been really appreciative to learn that element of aviation, because ultimately these are antique aircraft that we can't replace. So understanding how to troubleshoot things and understanding how the whole system works from the mechanical side as well as the flying side, I think is very important and very valuable. So I've flown a couple times in the T6. I've flown in the backseat of the Mustang a couple times.
Nice.
And hope we'll pick up that flying training here pretty soon.
Brilliant stuff. And you have to say one thing about Cabo, he's very approachable on Instagram. Like when we talk, he's straight back, so he's a very approachable guy. He's not like, I'm not going to talk to you, I'm a big shot. He's really an approachable guy. He's a lovely bloke. So like Cabo, thank you very much for coming on this Q&A. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get you back on the channel because you're a great guest. So thank you very much,
Perfect.
mate.
I appreciate it. Hopefully, we can talk to you more about warbirds and all that stuff later on the next time.
Absolutely. Cheers, and thank you to everyone who joined us.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers. Have a great night. See ya.